Right, for part 2, we'll concentrate on the gearbox. We're jumping a couple of steps, but that's okay. Similar to the engine, the parts are spread over several sprues, so we've got C's, D's, B's, a G, and an A, and an E. But let's get the parts cut up. Okay, so that's all the parts cut out. I've cut the sprue gates well back from the actual piece, and then I'll go back in and we'll trim them closer. Oh, no, I need a bit of a knife. I think I can't get the... On the first video, which the footage I lost, I discussed the various scrapers that's available. First one obviously being a knife, but there is several others that I do have. So I got the Citadel one quite a while back. Again, I was watching a YouTube review and I got that one. More recently, there was the Trumpeter Models one, which I saw some reviews on as well, and this one looks really good as well. So the problem is sometimes my modelling activities, or my modelling time, is limited, but my time to order and buy tools isn't, unfortunately. So I've got a lot of new tools that I haven't had the chance to use yet, so we'll be trying some of them out on the build as we progress. So let me just clean up these parts and then we'll start gluing them together. Okay, so first two components relatively cleaned up. We've still got the little nibs to remove that's left behind from the nippers. In the part 1, I also touched on glues, because back in the day, when I was younger days as a kid making Airfix models, it was always like the thick tube of Umbro cement or whatever. So coming back to the hobby and having things like Tamiya extra thin, or it's just like, wow, it just makes it so much easier, you know. I remember all my models had, especially aircraft canopies, always had finger marks on the canopies, and brush painted with Umbro enamels as well. That was the days, huh? So these two parts went together a lot easier. There was a defined click as they went together. It's a bit of pressure. I should have cleaned up that part a bit better before joining, but let's see if we can get in here. Yeah, that's the kind of issues a noob like myself comes across. Not planning ahead. Just need a bit more care in what I'm doing, or more importantly, what I'm going to do. We've got another bit here that needs to come off. So this scraper here works really well. It's also I think people were deceived because it's actually not sharp. It's a blunt edge, yet it still scrapes the plastic. A wee bit of an ejection pin mark there as well, but that'll be hidden. So I think what I'll do is clean up the sprue gates as I go, because they're either going to cause problems when I come to glue, or I'm going to forget about them. There's also, of course, all the different sanding sticks in the manufacturers. Considerable time ago, I bought a lot of Flory models ones, and on the whole they're okay. But what I've done is I've actually glued various grits of sandpaper just onto wooden lollipop sticks. They're the 3 ones I'd used previously for card modeling. So these do the trick, but sometimes it's nice to have some nice sanders as well. I'll try this one in this bit here. This one's a bit more bulky and awkward, maybe, but there we go. Still, don't know if you can hear that nice scraping action. Okay, so that's like that. I'll just continue cutting, gluing and cleaning up. It's funny how sometimes you get like almost a cut where there's absolutely nothing left, like this one here, and then the next cut leaves a larger stub. Now I can't see if I've done anything different, so it's kind of surprising really. So these gearbox parts, they seem to have a lot more positive alignment than the main parts of the engine. These can slide up and down a bit, so again a bit more care is needed. So we'll clean them up next. And we've got a plate here to put on the top. I'll just clean this one up because it's going to be a bit more difficult once it's on. So here's an interesting thing on the way they've moulded this. Rather than have the sprue gate on the edge, because there's no edge as such, the sprue gate comes in and is on the flat, so this whole surface gets glued together. So this will need to make sure that we remove the sprue gate from that flat surface. I guess it stops you damaging the edge, possibly if you come in from the side, or if the gate was on the side. but it's a very small part, so it's actually quite awkward. So I'm actually going to have to come in this side anyway. And similar to this one here, again it's on the face as opposed to the edge. I guess the difference between using a scraper like this and a knife is it's much more easier to dig into the plastic with the knife if you're not in just the right angle. Now, as you can see, there's 0 locating marks on these. So you've basically got 2 flat surfaces that can slide. Now the best and most secure way of joining 2 bits together. But we'll do one end at a time, so hopefully we can get enough of an alignment on one side before we do the other. Yeah, you have to watch any pressure and it starts sliding. You squeeze it together and it slides apart. So I might just leave this a wee bit to go off. Yeah, so this is a kind of thing I'm surprised where there's no little pegs in the hose. Alright, I'll leave this part well alone and then I'll come down and clean that up as well. Okay, so we've got this. The only trouble with cutting all the parts off and then coming back, as opposed to cutting, fitting, is sometimes you're not sure if it's actually, well, especially if you leave the screw gates on, whether it's a screw gate it's supposed to be there, or it's supposed to be removed. As you can see, this part here, or maybe you can't see actually, just about that line there is actually a mold line. And there's quite a number of these on the engine parts, and I actually thought I'd been cleaning them up, but once the paint went on, there was quite a number of them all stuck out, like the proverbial dogs. And you can maybe see the line down there, as well as the screw gate. On some parts, I guess, it's not that big a deal, because a lot of this, especially gearbox, this is going to be hidden, but on some components, they might be very visible. And again, obviously the mold line goes all the way around. Or the seam line, whatever you want to call it. Actually, I'll leave that because that might be a flange. So that goes onto there. Okay, so Again, you actually have an overhang, but it's not very clear on the diagram, so you have to be careful. Okay, I'm going to have to hold it. So in this part, there is a distinct step there, but I think it's supposed to be there because if you can see the end of this part, it is actually rounded and it fitted into like a corresponding curve. So again, you have to be careful you don't start removing actual parts. It's supposed to be there thinking that that's a seam line, but potentially it's not. Now, these kind of parts have to be careful because they're actually circular, so you don't want to make a flat on the part itself. In this case, you actually have to leave a bit of meat on there so you can sand it around. Again, even sanding with this is 400 and it's pretty well used. It's hardly any bite at all, but you have to be careful. Okay, so there's a slot there and a corresponding peg, but for some reason it don't want to line up. Oh, there we go. Trying to centralize the seam in this square because I'm guessing it has to be perpendicular. Well, this one's got a bigger curve. So I might see if I can trim this one by the knife and then smooth it off. Right, that's the worst locating point I've ever seen. So the diagram suggests that there's quite a substantial square to go into the hole, but in actual fact, there's not much there at all. So again, I'm guessing, because it's not clear, that pivot point or whatever has to be this line here, and then if you go this way, it has to be vertical, can't be this way or that way. So it's really just being held by the glue on the edges. There's nothing in that square cutout. I think I'll leave it alone for a bit. I might actually see if I can. And then we've got C41, which looks like some kind of oil filler. I might clean that seam before I cut off the sprue gate. Just gives me something else to hang on to. Okay. This part wanted to keep rotating round, which opened up this fittings here, but after a few seconds of gluing, keeping the pressure on, seems to went in okay. Clean this part up. That doesn't seem to be a forward or backward. Obviously it fits onto there, he says. Okay. I'm guessing both sides are the same. And then this triangle fits onto the bell housing of the engine. So let's clean this one up. Hopefully a lot of these parts will be virtually invisible once they go in the chassis and the bodywork and everything on them. Very little of this will be seen. So hopefully by the time I get to the visible stuff, my techniques and that will have improved. I might just remove just an angle on this internal opening here. It just felt like something was pushing against it, like a locating mark here is just a bit too big and it was like pushing it back out. Yeah, it doesn't seem to have. Of course, it's not too bad. I'll leave that now to go off without interfering with it. And I'll clean up these other parts and then we'll come back and have a look. Okay, so this is the gearbox finished. It wasn't too bad, it came up pretty well. So there was a couple of issues I had with some of the other components, which I'll show you. So on the support bracket, this one here, there's a flange that attaches to it. So on the back of the flange, there's like a little locator that fits into the slot here. It was slightly oversized, so it was, once it was in its position, it kind of sat proud and wouldn't go down flush. So to overcome that, it was just a simple matter of coming in with the blade and then just trimming each of the four sides, and then that allowed it to sit flush onto here, onto the bracket. The other problem was on the output shaft with the one half of the universal joint. It slots through here, which is okay, and it's a nice fit through this side as well, you can see. But the problem was, or still is actually, is on the output of the gearbox, the diameter is too big. So I've got a couple of options. One of them is to reduce the diameter of the output shaft or to enlarge the hole. I don't want to reduce the shaft purely because it's a nice fit in the other components. So what I'll do is I'll enlarge the hole. Now, as is the way, I looked through the drills. One was too small, one was too big. So what I'll do is I'll use a file and I'll just work my way around and enlarge the hole until the shaft fits. So I'll do that off camera. I had a look through the instructions in advance, and there's actually another output shaft with another half of the UJ, which comes off the transfer case of the gearbox, and that's actually a nice fit. It goes straight in, so I won't have to do anything there. Colour wise, I'm not sure what colour it's supposed to be, whether it's got like a black coating, whether it's the bare metal castings. I noticed Nigel from Nigel's modelling bench, he's painted it up almost like a British racing green, So Nigel's pretty good with his colours, he would have researched that, so I'll just do the same. Paint wise, I've only got this deep green here, probably not showing up in camera very well, so I'll just paint a Gearbox this. So what I'll do is I'll go off camera, I'll enlarge the hole for the shaft to fit, and then I'll paint it, and then we'll come back after that. Okay, so that's all the parts of the gearbox painted up. So we'll just assemble it now. So universal joint for my main drive shaft goes through that bracket, and then that fits into the end of the gearbox, which I enlarged a fair bit, to be honest. That goes there, that turns round. So the hole in the bracket lines up with the output shaft and the transfer case. So actually, if I put in the UJ or universal joint for that one. So that goes in like that. And then the take-off drive shaft from that passes through that hole there. And that's your gearbox complete. So I'm not going to glue the parts together just yet. I'll wait until the gearbox fits into the chassis. But yeah, the colour, it's quite dark, and again I haven't done any weathering. I'll do that at a later stage. But yeah, so this is the end of part 2. Thanks. I'll put some photos in at the end as well. Okay.